Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of Terre Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams. But we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other.
To look at our reflections on our first principle. Reverence and respect for human nature is at the core of the Unitarian Universalist faith. We believe that all the dimensions of our being carry the potential to do good. We celebrate the gifts of being human, our intelligence and capacity for observation and reason, our senses and ability to appreciate beauty, our creativity, our feelings, and our emotions. We cherish our bodies as well as our souls. We can use our gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, to create pleasure for ourselves and others. Just to be is a blessing. Just to live is holy. The great 20th century Rabbi Abraham Heschel wrote, Unitarian Universalists affirm the inherent worth and dignity of each person as a given of faith, an unshakable conviction calling us to self-respect and respect for others. Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker, minister and theologian and author. Our opening words, if you will join me, and I think we can all muffle this through, is number 687. Go your ways, knowing not the answers to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing than you know. John Brigham. And the opening hymn, which is number 40. Our transitional words are 657. It matters what we believe. Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusivity and the feeling of being especially privileged.
Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way into wider and deeper sympathies.
Some beliefs are like shadows, clouding children's days with fears of unknown calamities.
Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the warmth of happiness.
Some beliefs are divisive, separating the saved from the unsaved, friends from enemies.
Other beliefs are bonds in a world community where sincere differences beautify the pattern.
Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting off the power to choose one's own direction.
Other beliefs are like gateways, opening wide vistas for exploration.
Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of resourcefulness.
Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feeling of personal worth.
Some beliefs are rigid, like the body of death, impotent in a changing world.
Other beliefs are pliable, like the young sapling, ever growing with the upward thrust of life.
And now, of course, we're pleased to have Bill Breeden, and his talk today will give us a vision. What are we looking for? What are we waiting on?
I'm glad to be here. It's always fun to come over to Terre Haute. And let me see what I have in my pocket here. I have a machine. So I brought some audio-visual helpers today, something I rarely do. In fact, this may be the first time I've done it here. It is, isn't it? And what I want to do is share some things with you and comment as we go. I found this the other day, and I have to tell you, I grew up in a holiness home. I used to hide my magazine between the mattresses of our. It was a little too risque for our home, and but guys at school would give it to me and I'd bring it home and hide it. This is from 1968, a year before I graduated. It says, "See the super patriot. Hear him preach how he loves his country. Hear him preach how he hates liberals and moderates and intellectuals and activists and pacifists and minority groups and aliens and unions and teenagers and the very rich and the very poor and people with foreign-sounding names. Now you know what a super patriot is. He's someone who loves his country while hating 93% of the people who live in it." That's from 1968. It's as relevant today as it was then. Then our next one, imagine. I am inviting you to imagine today, to vision, to get your own vision, because other people's visions don't work for me. We have to find our own vision in this day and night. And what I would like to do, and I imagine a world where pro-life efforts included feeding hungry children. Imagine a world where pro-life efforts included feeding hungry children. I ask myself sometimes, what is it that Americans fear? What is it that Americans fear? I think we're afraid to love in our country. We're afraid to love because we're afraid to lose. And sometimes loving means losing. Sometimes loving means pain. What would we as a nation have to lose in order to love the poor? What would we as a nation have to lose in order to make pro-life include the 10,000 children a day on this planet who die of hunger? 10,000 a day. Well, in this country, we're spending $750 billion a year on defense. Because of our fears, I guess. $750 billion. Now, I think that some people really don't know. Well, before I get to that slide, give me I can do this, I'm sorry. This is what most people think most people, when they envision America, a globe, they think America's a huge country. It's the biggest country in the world. This is the United States right here, imposed on the African continent. We're not even close to being the biggest country in the world, and yet we act like we are. $750 billion a year is more than twice the amount spent by the next 7 nations in line. It's more than all the 7 nations next to us. It's twice as much as China. Well, it's almost 3 times as much as China. $750 billion a year. Now, the next slide, that's not the next slide. So I'll just read you the next one. I don't think some people understand how much a billion is. $1 billion. If you made $1 million a year, just cut it off right there. How many in here is doing that? I want to know. I want to see you afterwards. If you make $1 million a year, you would have to work 1,000 years to get $1 billion. 1,000 years, making $1 million a year. You'd have to work 1,000 years to get $1 billion. And in this country, I checked this morning, according to Forbes, as of 2019, it's probably a little more now, there are 607 billionaires in America. And most of them are not just 1 billion, but many billions. As Chris Rock said at the Oscars, it's the last thing he said. You never saw him the rest of the night, and I think it was because Bezos was in the audience. He said, Bezos is so rich. He just went through a divorce, and he's still the richest man on the planet by 3 times. That's how rich Bezos is. Who is worth $1 billion? We can't afford this anymore. That is the moral imperative of our time, is to get in control of this capitalist gone on crack. It is a moral issue. I've told you before that Adam Smith, the father of modern day capitalism, could not envision this at all. In fact, Adam Smith wasn't even called an economist. They didn't have economists in his days. The economists are bean counters primarily. They count money, they count figures. Adam Smith's title was a moral philosopher. We don't teach moral philosophy in America anymore. We teach economics. And economics is a zero-sum game. So we have, in the United States, 607 billionaires. Betsy DeVos, I'm told, has 10 yachts all around the world. All of them worth more than $1 million. So that when she flies to Europe, she doesn't have to mingle with the poor. She can go sit in her yacht. Any port of value in the country, in the world, she has a yacht sitting there waiting for her. And she's one of the lesser billionaires among us. So I got to doing some figuring one day. What would it cost us to love the poor? What would it cost us to love the 10,000 children who die of hunger? Enough to make a difference, enough to make us care. Well, $750 billion we're spending for military protection, basically for the corporations and for the billionaires. $750 billion. If we took $250 billion off of that, we'd be at $500 billion, which is still twice as much as China and more than all the other 7 nations combined behind us. We'd be at $500 billion, and we could take that $250 billion. And I decided to figure out, and this is a scary number. It scared me because of my background, and you'll understand when I read it. I decided to figure how many houses could we build, say at $150,000, be generous, $150,000 a house with $250 billion. You could build 1,666,666.666 houses at $150,000. If that many 666s in a row don't scare you, you didn't grow up with a Bible like I did. I mean, that sounds like the mark of the beast all over the place. 1,666,666.66 houses at $150,000 apiece, and we'd still have the largest military budget in the world by 2. Yes, we have 500,000 homeless in this nation. USA, 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 USA. What do we fear? that it's worth $750 billion a year to kill our fellow human beings. We're afraid of loving because we're afraid of losing. Another poster, which I don't have a picture of, but we used to have this hanging in our little house down in Greene County where we lived for a few years with no electricity and living very simply. And our kids come into our living room every day and they would see this poster on the wall by Albert Camus. If you've not read Camus, in English it looks like Albert Camus, but it's Albert Camus. And if you look up the philosopher of the absurd, you'll find Albert Camus. But his quote is, "I should like to be able to love my country and still love justice." I should like to be able to love my country and still love justice. And yet we have the highest incarceration rate in history. And we have 10,000 children on the planet dying of hunger, which, by the way, is more than 3 times the number of abortions in America, which seems rather strange in pro-life terms. Voltaire said, "Those who can make you believe in absurdities can make you commit atrocities." So let me talk a little bit about superpowers that you have. Superpowers, is that one in there? Let me check here. There we go. We'll get that one before I get it. Here's to all the unseen acts of love that made the world go around today. It is your acts of unseen love that works. And here are superpowers that you have. The ability to change yourself and your mind. As Muhammad Ali once said, the person who reaches 50 and still believes the same thing that they believed when they were 20 has wasted 30 years of their lives. Think about that. How many people you know? How many people you graduated with who are still thinking the same thing that they graduated high school with? Wasting years. The ability to change yourself and your mind is the ability to change the world in which you live. Not taking things personally. That's one of the Toltec agreements. Don't take it personal. Most things are not personal. Most of our daily experiences are not personal at all. And when we take them personal, we feel assaulted, we feel this or that, and it changes our perspective. So don't take them personal unless they really are, and then deal with it. Not needing to prove that we're right. In fact, I'd rather prove that I'm left. But it's not necessary to prove it. Just be who you are. Careful selection of all relationships. Staying calm. Glenda reminded me that this morning when I dropped the sugar container and broke the lid. I missed that staying calm. I won't tell you what I said. Being alone without being lonely. That's an important thing. And being okay, being uncomfortable, and thinking for yourself. That, I think, is the heart of Unitarian Universalism, summed up in a few words. Now what do we have? A bird gets up every morning. I don't know if the person knows this, but I believe it anyway. A bird gets up every morning and sings its song. It does not wait to hear what other birds are singing, nor does it look to see if another bird is getting more notice. It knows its song innately and sings. This is nature, knowing your song. This is nature, knowing your song. Each of us, I think, has the responsibility to discover the music in our own heart and our own soul. And not only that, but to write the music of our own heart and our own soul. And we can do that. We can do that if we don't live in fear. If we're living in fear, somebody else is writing the music. Somebody else is determining our vision. And as John says in the New Testament, there's an awful lot of good teachings there, and I suspect he got it from a guy named Jesus. As John said, perfect love casts out fear. And that's the kind of love that I strive to find. And I really believe, I've been in situations in my life in which there was rather common, or it would be rather logical to be fearful. And it has always been the awareness that I am loved that has helped me stay calm, has helped me stay cool. Blindfolded and handcuffed in Honduras, I knew I was loved. I knew I was surrounded by love. And that I was able to say to my captors, if I could see your eyes, I would believe that you love your children as I love mine. And you would understand that I am down here doing work for children. And if my children are hungry, you would feed them. And that's what we're doing. And I think the ability to express that kind of love went a long way toward them really understanding me and believing who I was. A poem by Glenda Breeden, written on Valentine's Day this year. Prison walls can't stop love, can't shove it to the side or keep it out of concrete cells where human beings hunger for kind words, a hug, a kiss, a life beyond their daily fare. And visitors can't store love in the locker for a token or a quarter and leave it in the glove box with a cell phone till visiting hours are over and the moan of leaving family, friends, or lovers behind finds a voice within the confines of the car in the prison lot. Prison walls cannot stop love, not even during lockdown when they stop visitors and calls. No, not even then. Walls cannot keep love out. It flouts the power's need to control and flies above the razor wire higher than the guards can see and slips through gates and sliding doors ever like the ever-present spirit that it is. Holy Spirit, holy love, holy filled with goodness, kindness, open arms and open hearts, parts of destiny, good fortune, good luck, the providence of being in the right place and the wrong place at the perfect time to offer friendship, hope and comfort, inspiration and comic relief. And this forever kind of love that believes beyond all reason that the season for confinement will someday end and prison walls will fall away and celebration will be the order of the day. We received a call last night from Philip Stroud, who's incarcerated in Pendleton. They've been locked down for several days now, unable to leave their cells at all. No one really knows why. But Philip knows that prison walls and lockdowns cannot keep out love. And Glenda and I are fortunate to work with people like Philip Stroud. Finally, a prayer. This is from a book of Uncommon Prayers by Brian Doyle. And it should be a reminder that Brian Doyle is a Roman Catholic, confessing Catholic. He's died now from a brain tumor, but he was editor of Portland Magazine for years and probably one of the finest wordsmiths of the English language I've ever read. And I've got several of his books, and when he celebrates his Catholicism and the rituals of Catholicism, I don't hold that against him. It met his need and his faith, and he was a wonderful, loving human being. This is called a desperate, and share this to show you that prayer, I've always said prayer is really just the words of the soul. And I pray. People are shocked to find that liberals pray. I pray. I don't know if anybody out there is listening. I don't really care. Prayer is the language of the heart. And you know, if you ever sat outside an emergency room when your son has been hit by a car as a child and didn't pray, it's not a matter of you not being religious, it's a matter of not being human. Because prayer is a human activity. And prayer comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. And here's a prayer from Brian Doyle. Desperate prayer for patience with politicians with excellent suits and shoes, meticulous hair, and gobs of television makeup, who have utterly forgotten that their jobs are finally about feeding and clothing and protecting and schooling children. They are driving me stark, muttering, mad, bubbling, insane. They are mattering and preening. They are dissembling and speechifying. They are evading the question and mouthing empty slogans. They are attacking straw men of their own devising and calculating market share. Their words are wind and dust, and meanwhile children starve and are raped and have no beds and teachers and doctors. They say they will do things, and they do not do those things. They appeal to the worst in us so as to be able to make money. They send children to war, though they have never been in war and do not know the savagery of what they are sending children to do. They abuse their power and sneer at the poor and condescend to the elderly and lie about their motivations and their biographies. They would happily soil every lake and river and pond and creek and rivulet with every imaginable searing, death-dealing chemical if there was enough money in it for them. They would foul every square meter of air with choking smoke and ash if there was enough money in it for them. They don't care about our children and our children's children. They pose for photo opportunities on the way to church, but they do not feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and house the homeless, and slake the thirst of those who are desperate. Dear sweet Lord, give me the patience to be reasonable and call them calmly to account. Give them the startle of guilt and the ripple of shame. Make sore their conscience and shiver their arrogance so that they may puncture it themselves and so begin to achieve humility and be of actual, honest, genuine service to the least among us. This we pray, trying not to snarl over much. And so, amen. This we pray, trying not to smile over much. I ask you all to know, to make your own vision, to see your own vision, to see your nation as it really is in relation to others, to see yourself as you really are in relation to others. I've said many times from this pulpit that the most important person you will ever meet is the person in front of you at the time. The person you are responding to, the person to whom you are returning the breath you just took. And how you do it, how you give it back makes all the difference in the world. That poster where we showed, "Here's to all the unseen acts of love that made the world go around today." I want you to know that in spite of it all, I'm a hopeful person. I really believe that our young people are going to come along and change this world in ways that we can't even imagine yet. I really believe the overwhelming majority of young people in this country understand that this planet is our home. And we can put rovers on Mars, and I think that's very exciting, but we ain't going to live there. And neither is Bill Gates or Davos or any of those guys. We need to take care of this planet. And in order to take care of this planet, we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to take care of others. Years ago, when Glenda went to Nicaragua during the Contra Wars, when we discovered Witness for Peace, a peace group in the country discovered that if Americans were living in the villages, the Contras wouldn't attack the villages because they was afraid that Congress would stop the money that Reagan was sending down. And so Glenda signed up for the first time in her life to leave the country and go to a war zone. And she went up into the mountains of Nicaragua in the area where the Sandinista revolution began. And she lived in a village there that had a bus right outside the village that had hit a Contra mine, killing 13 children. And she danced with the local men and women who went out into the jungle at night to protect the village from the Contras. And she asked one of them one time, how can you come in with his gun? He laid it down, and they were having a dance, and he got a break from the guard duty, came in and danced and enjoyed and had fun. And she asked him, how do you do this? How do you do this with that bus sitting out there? How do you do this with the constant threat of war? And they said, if you can't dance, you can't live. If we can't dance, we wouldn't be living. If we can't sing, we wouldn't be living. They were not living in fear. They were protecting themselves reasonably so. We protect ourselves unreasonably so with $750 billion a year, when we protect ourselves much better by feeding the poor, caring for the homeless, by feeding our neighbors. That's where care comes from, by love. But this phrase came out of that movement in Nicaragua and El Salvador. It's a banner that we have flown in our house for many years. And it actually came from the liberation gospel movement, which Black Liberation, if you're old enough to remember the book Black Liberation Theology by James Cone, all of that liberation theology migrated up from Central America, from the radical Catholic priests and Catholic people working with the poor who began liberation theology and transformed Central America in many countries. And they had a saying that said, El pueblo unido llama ser vencido. El pueblo unido llama ser vencido. The people united shall never be vanquished. The people united shall never be vanquished. I really believe that, and I believe we are going to see in the coming generation a united people. I really believe, if you look at the figures, overwhelming number of people in this country believe that we should be changing our economics. The overwhelming number of people in this country, the majority of people in this country, believe in love more than they believe in fear. And I believe that Unitarian Universalists need to be in that fight. We need to be in that struggle. We need to be joining our hands with the poor, with the imprisoned, with those who are missing out on this abundance that we have. And you know, I consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world. I have a safe place to live. I do have gunfire around me quite often, but you know, they're just out there exercising their masculinity mostly. I suppose some of them are not masculine, but they like to shoot their guns. But I believe we are privileged. I really do. I'm a privileged white man. Not rich, but by global standards, I'm very rich. Not rich by American standards, but extremely privileged. I've never, ever had to worry about getting shot when I was pulled over by a policeman. Never have. Except once when I was in college and got pulled over in the middle of the night and they thought I'd robbed a store because of the description of my car. And that was back in the days when I got stopped by a cop. You know, I just jump out of the car and go talk to him. And I jumped out of the car and looked at his gun. And it scared him. He said, I almost shot you. I thought you were a robber. So I do, and I told my children early on, don't jump out of the car when you get stopped by a police. But I never had to worry about my son getting shot or killed by a policeman when he was pulled over, because he's not black. That's just simply the facts in America. And we need to face up to that. If you haven't read Isabel Wilkerson's The Warmth of Other Suns or her new book called Caste, I recommend it. It's a painful book to read, but unless we know who we are, we cannot know who we may be. It's good to be with you today. I really am more an optimist than a pessimist. I really am a hopeful person. I won't say I'm optimistic because I don't have enough evidence for that, but I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful that not only young people, but many people in our nation are having their heads changed, and their minds changed. And we may end up thanking Mr. Trump for showing us what it can be, to showing us the other side, and showing us how dangerous it is. And I, too, pray for patience as Brian Doyle did, because patience is what it's going to take, and hating won't get me anywhere. El pueblo unidos llama ser vencido. You have the power to think for yourself, to create your own vision, to live out that vision every day of your life. I encourage you to do so for the sake of our world and for the sake of our grandchildren. Blessed be. Our closing hymn is number 20, Be Thou My Vision.
Not be all else to me.
Closing words are number 693. And now may we have faith in life to do wise planting, that the generations to come may reap even more abundantly than we. May we be bold in bringing to fruition the golden dreams of human kinship and justice. This we ask, that the fields of promise become fields of reality.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore.
Go in peace. Know that you're loved. And know that your life is sacred, and that you can be an element of change in the world. Blessed be.